Hi everybody, welcome to this special CUBE presentation. My name is Dave Vellante and we're here on the ground in New York City at 1 Madison. This is the IBM Analyst Relations Forum. It's an annual huge event, a number of analysts here, well over 100, getting deep dives on IBM, its strategy, a lot of AI talk, of course, and we're here with Sriram Raghavan, who's the Vice President of Research for AI at IBM Research. Sriram, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Awesome, Dave, pleasure to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, let's get into it. Let's start with your role. I mean, IBM Research it's an American icon and one that is, I think, experiencing a new renaissance. What's your role there, and tell us a little bit about how you spend your time.
Awesome, so my official role is I'm Vice President at IBM Research for AI. That means my responsibility is the strategy and execution of everything we do in core AI research, R&D, at IBM Research. I sit out of our labs here, just half an hour north of where we are sitting today. And we have a global team of thousands of research scientists and engineers who are building both foundational AI, applying it, delivering it to our clients and partners. I, in my role, partner with leaders of every part of IBM Consulting, IBM Software, Red Hat, IBM Infrastructure. And the goal is really to deliver state-of-the-art AI technology for the enterprise into every one of our products and offerings, whether it is hardware, whether it's software, whether it's consulting.
So you're at Yorktown Heights at the Thomas J. Watson Research Facility, which is amazing. You might recall our audience last year, we did a little a CUBE hit from there. It's a wonderful facility, great vibe. First of all, it's beautiful, but you feel smarter just walking in with all the brains.
That's my home, yes.
I want to talk about AI adoption. So some of the data that we have from our survey with our partner ETR shows that 74% of customers have at least one use case for Gen AI into production, but these use cases, I call them chatty. Mm-hmm. They're very chat GPT-like. Mm-hmm. I say the enterprises are largely hitting singles right now in terms of ROI. 40 to 50% of the customers tell us they're stealing from other budgets to fund their Gen AI. And so it's early days, and they're pushing their ROI expectations out. In the early days, it was, inside of 3 months. It'll be 2 weeks before we get ROI. Now it's sort of pushing out to a year or more. And that's a result of, I think, their initial testing and so forth. What are you seeing in sort of overall adoption?
So I think we're definitely seeing the shift, as you said, from let me try something cool with this technology to now really ROI conversations. And in the ROI conversation usually comes down to a few things, Dave. It comes down to what's the most efficient and effective way can I get to the outcome? As opposed to let me just try the first way in which I get an outcome. What's the most efficient and effective way? That goes back to what's the right model? What's the right architecture? Where do I run it? Second thing it gets to is for me to really get ROI, I need to be able to customize it. I can take something off the shelf, get started. How do I customize it for my needs? And the third thing then it gets to is, now tell me how I scale. Most enterprises have a complex business. I have applications and data sitting in a number of places. In IBM parlance, we say all enterprises we talk to have a hybrid estate. Some public cloud, some private cloud, some on-prem. How do you help me get my AI working in that hybrid environment? So it's really cost and performance, right fit for purpose technology, ability to customize for that enterprise's needs, and then how do I scale this? And we're definitely seeing that inflection point. And that inflection point between experimentation and real value hits on these three vectors.
Our data shows that it's probably around 92% of the world is hybrid. There's very few customers that are 100% in the cloud. Even us, a small company like ours, we do have some on-prem. Let's talk about the new LLMs that you're releasing.
Right.
I think it's 3.0, Granite 2 billion and 8 billion parameter models. Before we get into the announcement, can you explain parameters? We throw this term around a lot.
Right.
And it speaks to the weights and the biases. People see a bigger number, they infer that must be a better model. But of course, as you well know, cost is a huge implication.
Exactly.
But explain what parameters are for the layperson.
So parameters are a way to say, how does the model represent the data that you train it on? So you assume, therefore, that larger means I can do more. The reality is that, let's take the models we're going to be talking about. Those aren't consuming small amounts of data just because they are smaller than some of the other models you hear about. The models that we're releasing have 12 trillion tokens of data going into them. What's actually happened is, to some extent, over the last few years of continued innovation, we're all figuring out. We were out there saying that first, and now the others are joining us. You can do a lot with 8-10 billion parameters. It doesn't make those models any less efficient or effective. Now, yes, if you come in and say, I have no idea what I want to do. I want to do a million different things. Sure. Then you probably want a model that is double. But most enterprises aren't like that. They usually know, I want to improve my customer service. I want to be able to do Q&A self-service for my partners. I want to make my employee HR questions, rapid turnaround, effective response without always waiting for. Those use cases, you can do a lot with 8 to 10 billion parameters. So think of parameters as relating to model size, but people assume that necessarily means the model is less performant, and it's not, because it sees a lot of data. And why does model size become important? It goes back to our previous conversation, cost. If I need to put a fat model, I need larger hardware. It takes longer. Every query will require more hardware, money, power, all of that. If I can get the same thing done with a model that is a 10th, 100th size, you get the same outcome, but you get it for much cheaper.
Yeah, so remember, of course, these large language models that we're all familiar with, like GPT-4, they're trained on everything. Okay, IBM's strategy is to really focus on enterprise value. So we often talk on theCUBE about small language models and domain-specific models, and from a cost standpoint, enterprises are going to be much more receptive to those models, and we're going to talk about what you're announcing. But in addition, instead of training on the internet where everybody has access to it, you're going to train on your specific data, and it's going to bring proprietary advantage. So let's talk about what you're announcing.
Yes.
In 3.0.
Awesome. So we went through, let me explain sort of the 3.0 generation. We're announcing Granite 3.0. Now, why 3.0? First version of Granite, we started really with sort of fit for purpose models for some of our applications and software. Earlier this year in Granite 2.0, we basically went open, started releasing models in the open, and we're continuing that with Granite 3.0. But the focus in that release was primarily around code models. We released a family of code models. We had early versions of time series models. With Granite 3.0, we're releasing, and let me just run through everything we're releasing, and then we can have a discussion. Right. So we're releasing 2 flagship language models, Granite 8 billion, Granite 2 billion. They get released in both a base version and an instruct version. But the point is that they are like the workhorse models. They let you do everything enterprises want to do. I do RAG, I do summarization, I do classification, all of the normal fundamental building blocks of most enterprise use cases today. They're being trained on, as I said, over 12 trillion tokens. They cover both 12 languages, English, French, Spanish, Japanese, 12 languages that we doubled down on in IBM, and over 116 programming languages. And they have state-of-the-art performance compared to all the models in the weight class, right? That weight class is the parameter size we're talking about. Associated with that, we're also releasing what we're called Granite Guardian models. Again, 8 billion and 2 billion. What do the Guardian models do? They, in some respects, give you sort of this cloak of protection around the main model. So you have a model, you send data in, you get data out. But you always worry about what if the model has toxicity, it has biased information. Somebody's trying to jailbreak the model and get it to do what I don't want it to do. So Granite Guardian models, you put, like I said, in front of the model and outside the model. So what's coming into the main model, what's going out the model, you put the Granite Guardian models. And they have best of breed performance with respect to what's called guardrails. They have detectors for all of these things, and we have benchmarked them, best of breed. So that's the second category. We're also releasing an accelerator model. The goal of the accelerator model, again, goes back to ROI. We are releasing the accelerator only for the 8B because the 2B model is already very small, very efficient. The 8B model, suppose you want to get even more throughput on a given piece of hardware. You attach the accelerator model, you get 2.5 times throughput and latency on a given piece of hardware. Because the little accelerator model finds a way to sort of guess what the big model is going to do and let it do faster. It's a technique called speculative decoding. That's the third. And then last piece of Granite 3.0 is we are releasing a first set of mixture of experts model from IBM using a new mixture of experts architecture. And we have intentionally focused that initially on the really, really small. So what's unique with this mixture of experts model is, I'm going to use the word and then I'll explain the word. We have a 3B A800 million. What does it mean? It means the model behaves trained as if it's a 3 billion parameter model. But at inference time, it only requires the cost of 800 million parameters. And we're releasing 2 models, both of which are going to use less than 1 billion parameters at inference time. And the goal there is to target a developer getting started, I have a little laptop, I want to experiment with Granite. Edge devices where you don't have the ability to run even an 8 billion parameter model. That's the mixture of experts model. So 2B, 8B, Guardian models, accelerator, mixture of experts models. That's the new Granite 3.0 family that we're bringing up.
So just for context, GPT-3 I think is probably 175 billion parameters. So we're talking about 2 billion and 8 billion. Significantly less expensive, and any CFO will tell you the best way to get ROI is to reduce the denominator, right? Lower the price,
That's right.
lower the cost. Now you showed benchmarks in our session earlier today relative to GPT-4, Llama, all the major models in Granite showed very well leading in all those categories. And they are a combination of industry standard benchmarks, and you also have added some of your own benchmarks like in cybersecurity.
Right.
So, and some very impressive numbers in terms of performance. What about accuracy? How do you compare from an accuracy standpoint to some of these other larger models?
All of the benchmarks is actually accuracy benchmarks. They were actually accuracy benchmarks, and we did two kinds of comparisons. This was model on its own, vanilla, compared on both academic and proprietary benchmarks with other models in the same category, right? It's apples to apples. Models from other open source providers, Google and Meta and others, to just give you a sense of, okay, this is the performance you can get, best of breed for models in that category. Then the other comparison you saw is, if I know what I'm doing, an enterprise use case, so I am trying to answer Q&A on reconciliation procedures inside a bank. I'm trying to do classification of customer complaints, a telecom company. Or I'm inside IBM and I'm trying to automate my quote to cash process. Those examples, what you saw were the Granite models with the other technology we released earlier, this called InstructLab, that lets you customize for that use case, essentially saying, look, I can match or exceed the performance of a GPT model, but now I am 75 to 95% cheaper.
Okay, so
that's a combo.
So you pin on the accuracy and then measure the performance from that anchored point.
Exactly.
That's a very
Because it's not useful
nuance.
to say I am cheaper, but hey, my results are going to not be good enough, right?
Yeah,
So
I think that's a huge difference. I mean, my next question was going to be, how do you differentiate? Well, it's sort of an obvious throwaway question here, but I'd like to understand it just in your words, how you see the competitive differentiation of IBM relative to some of these other offerings. Of course, you're open source and you're Apache 2.0. I've talked to customers who have said, we don't want to use, I'll just use an example, sorry Meta, not to pick on Llama because you're doing some awesome work, but we don't want to use Llama because it says, well, at some point they can come back and charge us. You're Apache 2.0, full open source, I have no constraints. So that's one differentiator. What are some of the other differentiators in the market?
I would list it in the following way. So number one, I think, is the choice of the data that we want to put in. Like the benchmarks that we pick, that 12 trillion tokens was carefully curated enterprise relevant data. And we understand as IBM, I think, the ambit we have through our consulting and software business and enterprise, we understand what use cases matter. So a focus on enterprise relevant data went into the model. Second, you said open Apache license so that everybody understands exactly what you're getting with a model, which means you have starting with a base to customize that everybody understands. We've been dealing with Apache license for a long time, the world understands. I think the third differentiator I would say is we are optimizing and making this model available in a hybrid environment. So obviously the model will be available on watsonx, and watsonx runs in a hybrid environment. So that's right out of the bat. Later this year, the models will be available through both RHEL AI and OpenShift AI. So which means whether you're running on-prem or on the cloud, the IBM cloud, partner clouds, you're going to have this model optimized in a platform that runs everywhere. And we're also making the model available, obviously open source on Hugging Face. Download, developers use it with whatever tools you're familiar with. The model is also available on Llama, which is a very popular place for developers to pick it up. So I think that hybrid angle, and by the way, the model is also available through NIM stack with NVIDIA. So enterprise focus, what we talked about, performance and cost, Apache license, a hybrid environment availability, and then last, and I have to say this, the backing of IBM with respect to the trust, governance, and for clients, the indemnification that we provide as they start to use Granite in a commercial context. I think that's a foundational differentiation that sort of completes the story.
It's a very open mindset with a differentiated, I would say highly differentiated model approach. incorporated in with whether it's IBM Consulting, I'm sure you're going to be embedding into IBM software across the portfolio, specificity for the customer, those domain-specific models. So I want to come back to use cases. As models like this come to market,
right.
and we published, a couple of years ago, actually, we call it the power law of Gen AI, where you have along various industries domain specificity with smaller language models, and that seems to be playing out here, specifically. So as you roll this out, what kind of use cases are you seeing beyond what we were talking about before, the chatty use cases, text summarization, code generation, all wonderful things,
right.
but not the big NPVs that customers and CFOs are after. How are you seeing, or how do you expect the use cases to evolve as a result of this?
So I think I look at it in three buckets, Dave. There are three big buckets of use cases. The first bucket is customer care writ large. They can start with, as you call, the chatty thingies, but customer care writ large, and when I use the word customer, sometimes it is true end customer facing. Sometimes the customer is the internal employee. Sometimes the customer is a partner portal, a supplier portal. So where you are essentially connecting to other human beings through a business process and lots of data and questions. I think customer care in this broader definition is a huge area that we are seeing. We're seeing, in fact, a spectrum from our existing watsonx assistant business, which by the way already embeds Granite, to new capabilities opened up by the new generation of models. The second category is broadly enterprise automation. We call it digital labor. And you heard yesterday with consulting, the embedding of Granite into Consulting Advantage is going to open up. Consulting is talking about millions of digital assistants that are going to partner with the human beings in IBM Consulting to drive process transformation. We have done some internal benchmarking of this latest generation of Granite models we talked about with carefully curated BPO benchmarks, right? Consulting does BPO across the world. These are unique proprietary benchmarks that you're not going to get reflected in the academic domain. The Granite models, because of the value we put into the data that went into the models, are doing phenomenally well with models that are the big ones, double, triple the size. Now that allows consulting to go in and offer a differentiated value proposition with the domain knowledge of running a BPO process. Now, with the absolute cheapest cost model that you can do, that's going to transform the BPO process. And then the third category, so sort of customer care, digital labor, business automation, including things like BPO. And the third category is everything to do with code. And code comes in a few flavors. We went out initially with our Watson Code Assistant family of products, all powered on Granite models. And we targeted first our COBOL franchise, the COBOL to Java modernization. We are now releasing WCA Code Assistant powered by Granite for general purpose programming, specifically around Java, which again, is a language we understand very well in IBM, our footprint with WebSphere and the decades of having enterprise Java.
And it's ubiquitous.
It's ubiquitous. Yeah. So that's the second big, and that's the spectrum of use cases. It sometimes starts with help a developer, but I'll tell you it's amazing. You know what's the most important use case we hear in code? Code explanation. Forget about even helping.
What does this say?
Yes, because I'm dealing with legacy code. Yeah. Every enterprise is dealing with lots of code. I have my new batch of developers. Can you help them understand what the code is doing? It's amazing how much value that gives. So we're very excited about these three big categories, and we see Granite already embedded in every one of the IBM software products, and that's going to keep going.
We saw some, I think Rob Thomas and Dario presented some information on productivity gains.
Right.
On specific, you said one was like off the charts, by the way, on cost. One, I think it was a telco, 6.6 million annual cost for using traditional LLMs versus $420,000 annually. That's just night and day. With some pretty substantive productivity improvements. I want to push you a little bit on this. Maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't, maybe you don't have enough visibility yet, but compared to RPA,
right?
Okay, which is very deterministic. I've got a process, it's hard-coded, it works. It's maybe a little bit of a heavy lift to get started, but it's delivered some pretty good productivity improvements. Are you seeing any patterns in terms of those companies who have installed RPA, they have that plumbing and maybe bringing things like Granite on top of that, and or folks that have not implemented that kind of enterprise automation and are starting from maybe from a blank sheet of paper and the kind of productivity. So is there a productivity boost above and beyond RPA, or is it more you can do things that RPA can't do? And is there any sort of patterns that you can discern there? Because it's a really important question for a lot of customers in the marketplace. Do I throw out my RPA or do I build on top of it?
I think the answer is that there's going to be benefit in all of these scenarios. Because let me put it this way. Certainly, you're starting with a clean sheet of paper. This is the technology arc you want to run on. Why go back, right? So that's obvious. Even if you look at what RPA did, RPA was one of those things about take a particular step that a human being is doing and try to either help them do that faster or do it on their behalf. There wasn't an approach there where you can take an entire process and rethink how you do it. And I think that's what these models provide. So there's a difference between, and this is sort of the fundamental difference between, if you will, the previous generation of AI and this generation of AI, not to use too much of the word generation. The previous generation said, I'm going to take something very specific, build a model for that. Take something specific, build a model for that. And if I use the word model generously, RPA, you could imagine, had models in it. Maybe
Sure.
sometimes they were rule-driven, they were sometimes. But the problem you ran into was, if a process had 50 steps, you were talking about building and maintaining 50 models. Now you're talking about a general purpose model, Granite, tune it with your process data, with InstructLab. You have that model, the ability for it to do all of those 50 steps. With a single model, one stack, run it once, you're going to have an ROI difference that's like nothing we have seen. So I think the way to think about it is clean state, absolutely. If you've done RPA, you still have an opportunity now to start to replace it with a new generation of technology. You may still want to carry some of the plumbing and fabric, but I think that's a journey that's going to absolutely happen. This is too big a technology shift in the way we do AI for it not to change it fundamentally.
I mean, we agree on this. I mean, I've seen a lot of waves. Saw the PC wave, saw the internet wave,
Right.
the cloud wave. This feels like it's bigger than all of those, and I think it is. Although of the hundreds of people that I've interviewed over the last 2 years, there was only one, literally one, that said, I don't believe it. You know, and you're hearing a lot of noise in the media, things are overhyped. What gives you confidence that we're right about this?
So I think two things. So one is first internal experience at IBM. This is one of the things, and I think you heard that from Rob earlier today.
You did, yeah.
This is one of those eras where better than any other time in IBM, we've used this technology often early versions inside even before we put it out. That's confidence. IBM complex enterprise. We have a large number of employees, we run in a number of countries. If we can transform our code to cache, our Ask HR, the way we run our BPO, I think this really gives us confidence that the technology hunts here. That's number one. I think the second thing is that this inflection point is a real inflection point because the previous generation of AI hit two major impediments in enterprise AI. The first impediment was, I need to build too many models. It's just too much expensive. And then to build each one of these models, you're going to ask me a lot of training data, label data, each one of them. This technology, so even in the previous generation, there were use cases, there was value, the technology wasn't ready. This now feels like, okay, you know what, this technology addresses exactly the two things we saw hitting us. That's an extra level of confidence. This isn't confidence coming from just the last 2 years. It's confidence coming from having seen these use cases, but now having the technology that actually addresses stuff that didn't let us scale in the previous generation. So between internal deployments and the fact that this technology is addressing real pain points, huge confidence. And I'll put it this way. I think we hear two kinds of narratives. We hear hype, or we hear it's going to take over the world. The reality is right in the middle. It's amazingly useful. It ain't taking over the world. But if you're done right, you're going to get enormous productivity like we have never seen before.
Sriram, it's exciting to have you on. I hope we can have you back on theCUBE and monitor the progress and pick your brain some more. I got so many more questions, but we're out of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave.
Appreciate
Pleasure.
your time. And thank you for watching. Keep it right there. We're on the ground here at IBM in the Big Apple. Dave Vellante, John Furrier, and David Linthicum. We're right back right after this short break.
For all of human history, a gap has existed between idea and artifact. But today, thanks to generative AI, IBM Consulting Advantage is closing the gap. Now, ideas and development can happen simultaneously, allowing for uninterrupted creative momentum. IBM Consulting Advantage is an AI-powered services platform that combines the expertise of our people with Gen AI assistance, proven methods, and reusable assets from IBM and other leading technology providers. Now you can talk to digital buying personas to understand their needs in minutes instead of days, or restructure unruly data sets within hours instead of weeks. This means shorter time to outcomes and more competitive pricing. By addressing the human capacity constraints, the potential for innovation is limitless. That's the science of consulting. Let's create the future of your business.
Hello and welcome to this CUBE special coverage here in New York City. We are at the IBM Analyst Forum 2024. I'm John Furrier, along with Dave Vellante and Dave Lithicum, doing wall-to-wall interviews, talking to the experts at IBM, the leaders, as they set the agenda for the next generation. As this Gen AI wave comes on, it's going to be super important for companies to figure out how to set up their infrastructure, their data, to bring in those Gen AI apps that are going to be coming into the market. It's a tsunami, it's a Cambrian explosion, and we are here in New York covering it all with a friend of theCUBE, Bruno Aziza, newly appointed Group Vice President of Data, Analytics, and AI at IBM. Great to see you. I think this is like your either 13th or 14th time on theCUBE. You're a CUBE alumni going back to 2012.
Yes.
Welcome back to theCUBE now as an
Thank you.
IBMer executive. How's
Thank
it
you.
feel?
It feels great. It's always great to talk to you, John. I always have fun. I watch all your shows, so I'm both a participant and a fan of the shows.
Well, you are a super fan because you took our last 3 podcasts and put it in Google Notebook LM and made a podcast about our podcast. I can't wait to listen to that. But I'm super excited for you because we have history. I've followed your career of your journey for over a decade, 12 years now. You've had your finger on the pulse in data for a long, long time. And we go back to the old Hadoop days, which I call kind of the Gen 1 of the big data revolution, which we're now living in now, the Gen AI, which is a total secular shift.
Yeah.
It's a game changer in a way we've never seen before since the web. The evolution of the onboarding of analytics to Gen AI is transitioning, and we're just starting to see the adoption of Gen AI. We're expecting massive growth of Gen AI to be pervasive throughout all companies, all businesses, and our lives. So this is a great moment. And you got the domain expertise and the experience. Now you're going to run the ship here at IBM looking at analytics. What's your vision and how do you see this evolving? Because IBM is really well positioned. They have a lot of data, a lot of applications, a lot of big customers.
Yeah. So first of all, you're right. So I've had a journey through small, medium, and large organizations. You followed me through the 4 startups that I did when I was at Microsoft and most recently at Google. And I've been able to kind of see the evolution of what's going on in the world of data. IBM has a huge opportunity on multiple fronts. I think the first one is obviously the credibility with the enterprise. I think we now are kind of past the first inning on generative AI. We got really a lot of excitement on the consumer side, but we know that the rules of enterprise Gen AI are very different. And so IBM has already the trust of a lot of important players in industry. So I think that's definitely an advantage when you think about using Gen AI as a business transformation option. And then the second bit that I would say that really excites me is the culture of invention. I don't know if you know this, but IBM invented SQL. The first DBMS was from IBM. And so when you bring these 2 things together, in the moment of history that we're in, there are not many players, I think, that can partner as a business transformation company for these enterprises.
Yeah, and IBM, a historic brand, obviously, they basically invented business computing, going back to the roots of Tom Watson in the early days, mainframes. And some are comparing the NVIDIA and the clustered systems that are emerging as kind of the mainframe and distributed computing cloud model, which is, if you look at it, these clustered systems is essentially supercomputing for the masses. It's democratizing basically horsepower or computing. That's going to enable a lot of change with data. And again, data's been around, you've seen it. Predictive analytics is not going away, but it is coming into Gen AI. How do you see the portfolio? Because this has become a moment in time where I kind of feel, I was talking to Dave about this, it feels like a Steve Jobs moment where he gave that famous speech to the employees and said, we're going to go back to our old agency, we're going to simplify things, we're going to go back to our roots, we're going to streamline, make it simple, just iMac and then the iPod. That famous speech, it's on YouTube. And he really was simplifying. He says, we're too complex. IBM has a similar portfolio where there's so much going on that you really can't include everything. But now with Gen AI, you can abstract away and still have all those great things. But simplification seems to be the theme because people are moving very fast. What's your view?
Absolutely. I think if you look at the stat in the market, you'll find that 66% of CIOs are dissatisfied with the progress they've made with Gen AI. Interestingly enough, 60% of them do not have a consistent strategy for the transformation through Gen AI. So I think there's a correlation between these two numbers. The reality is that the world of the CIO today, when it comes to Gen AI, is what I call the multi-world. You have to deal with multi-cloud, you have to deal with multiple models of multiple size. So you need to have a small model strategy and a large model strategy. Multimodal, of course, is an important dimension, but you also have multi-cloud that you have to think about. You have multi-step, right? Because you're going from assistants to agents, multi-interfaces, there's chatbots and embedded. And then finally, you think about it as a multi-year effort. And so I think when you're a CIO and you're thinking about that, it's very, very complex. And the opportunity for us is to really simplify across the stack. First, you're going to manage and work with data. Then you're probably going to orchestrate it. And then you're probably going to activate it. And when you think about doing that for the enterprise, I think what matters the most is, are you working with a partner that doesn't really have a horse in the race of which cloud you're going to choose or which model you're going to choose, but is really aligned with your goals as a CIO on how do we succeed over the next 10 years in transforming your business with Gen AI, which is very close to the identity of what IBM has done for decades at this point.
You know, we've been talking about supercloud for 2 years, and the whole idea of supercloud was it's multi-cloud, but it was a lot of other multi going on. You mentioned multimodal, which we know, we hear that all the time. Computer vision, text, the foundation models are not just language, it's a lot of images, so modal. Multi-modal is interesting because that brings up the whole power law. Models will work together with each other. Multi-cloud, that's the data center in the cloud, if you will. That's the hardware, as I say. I think AJ Patel actually said that once on theCUBE. The cloud is just hardware. I'm a middleware guy. So multi-cloud is super important. And when you start to integrate things. Multi-step is new. You said multi-step. Rob Thomas mentioned that here at the Analyst Forum. He says that's where the value is. And of course, multi-year, it's a horizon, it's a journey, 10, 20-year generational shift. Talk about multi-step. How do you see that happening? Because I think that's where the dots connect with agents. Because there's reasoning involved, there's self-learning, self-healing. These are concepts. Take us through, unpack multi-step.
So the idea for me, what I've observed with customers, for many years, is that what we've been working on has really been assistance locked in an application context. So it might be a co-pilot for your business intelligence application or a co-pilot for your dev environment. But the reality is that what you're trying to do is you're trying to build a world where agents are going to be, one, collaborative. So imagine a world where now as an agent above a layer of a cloud or above a layer of an application, I'm able to have awareness of other agents I can pull in. And then the second aspect is I'm going to be action-oriented or outcome-oriented. The great philosophy I like is Clay Christensen's Jobs to be Done is nobody wakes up with a database problem. We all wake up with a business growth issue. And so if I can now interface with an agentic framework that says, how do I solve for business growth? Now you can imagine a team of agents that are assembling around your issue. Analytics is a great example because we have a huge issue today with business analytics or business analyst talent. Now you can use agents to collaborate with other agents to collaborate with other humans across domains and effectively solve beyond just creating a dashboard, solve to create a business outcome.
You know, you and I were talking last night when we saw each other for the first time now that you're at IBM, and we talked about the analytics market. You mentioned analytics engine as a way to look at kind of how analytics is going to have a life of its own, if you will. It's my words, not yours. But take me through that vision. I think this is relevant around these action. And when you bring in multi-step and multimodal, it's implied that now you have models talking to each other, so some sort of trust delegation relationship there. You now have that's going to provide some value. That's got to be fed to a process that has certain steps and domain expertise that's going to be automated and trusted. Where does that connect? What does that enable? How do I figure out all these dashboards? How do I have this analytics engine? Explain what you meant by that.
The currency in the world of data is trust. I think we all know that. I think that some of the adoption issues we've had in the industry is not because we haven't had great cloud technology or great database technology, is because ultimately we're unable to trust the data. So I think when I think about AI and big data coming together, we now have a huge opportunity to use AI on data, so you can get better data, and then use data for better AI. You need to be able to orchestrate that. You need to be able to govern that. And there aren't a lot of companies that can do that across multiple clouds. I mean, a simple example might be today, if I want to build a workflow, who's going to tell you which is the best infrastructure to run that on? What is your left to right view of the various agents you could be using? And by the way, it could be agents we build, it could be your agents, it could be agents from other companies. And so this idea of having a framework for the hybrid world, which is this dimension that we talked about, and a model for openness is going to bring the most value to the CIOs who today have not standardized on one cloud or one application. They have the multiplicity of that environment, and they need someone to come on top to help them orchestrate all of that. If you think about music, you got the guitar player and the drummer, they all have great value by themselves, but someone needs to be orchestrating that, and I think we have a great role to play here.
And at any given time, some data will get the guitar solo.
That's right.
Some will get the drum solo. So harmony is really critical in music.
Yeah.
And it feeds off each other. They reinforce and share.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the idea. I mean, the CIO today needs more calm to be brought to their world, because over the last 10 years, we've certainly have a lot of innovation around networking and compute and of course databases. And now every morning that you wake up as a CIO, you're getting hit with another model and another benchmark. So how do you build this strategy that really we know is going to be a 10-year strategy? The internet is a great example for us, right? When we got the internet, everybody got excited. Well, it took us 10 years for 70% of companies to get a website that actually is functioning. I think we got to approach it this way, because if you don't, you're going to miss the opportunity to truly become competitive in the market. And so that's what I'm excited to do. And that's why I'm here, because when I was kind of looking at where's the future taking us, there aren't a lot of organizations that have the credibility and the ability to execute against that. There's a lot of organizations that have great technology, and I love every single one of them I've worked at. And now we're in a stage where, okay, let's take that to the next level. Let's orchestrate for a better business process, better automation, better governance, so we can drive the industry into a much trusted and reliable environment.
Let's talk about your job. Here in New York, Rob Thomas, who we've known for many decades as well, he's been with IBM for 25 years. He said on stage something that kind of is consistent with what I've been hearing here at IBM. And coming from Rob is interesting, although he's an executive, so it's a little bit biased, but I think he was totally sincere. He said, in my 25 years at IBM, I've never seen more innovative time for IBM. He's never really rolled out that cliche in the past, like we're more innovative. He actually meant it. And I hear that a lot from other IBMers, because the Gen AI is a renaissance opportunity, especially for historic brands like IBM, and even companies like Salesforce, who are not pivoting, but they're abstracting away they have the data. IBM's got data, they got plenty of technology, they got a lot of applications, they got a lot of customers. So you see IBM's got a nice spring to their step right now. So you can see it in how their strategy is. So what attracted you to IBM? Because you're at Google Ventures before that, Google Cloud, BigQuery. I mean, you had your hands on some pretty cool things.
Yeah.
What was it about IBM, and what are you going to be working on?
So first of all, I had a very fun time at Google, just like you said. I mean, within 3 years, we became a top 5 software organization with Google Cloud. So it was really an incredible acceleration, and I had a ton of fun. Lots of friends that I have there. In fact, one of my friends is here, Ritika, right? So one of the opportunity to come and work with Ritika, who she and I worked together at Google, was a huge factor. The other factor was the moment in time in our history. I really believe that we're now at a pivotal point where you need, I don't want to say mature thinking, but that's really, I think, where we can help CIOs, and I want to put myself in a position where I can be the most helpful. And then third, I think, just like Rob explained, we are at a unique point where this pace of innovation is getting really interesting, I think, because there's been a lot of noise in the consumer Gen AI world, but there hasn't been a lot of structure for enterprise Gen AI. And I think IBM is a great opportunity. Let me give an example. You asked me what am I going to work on. So I'm working on outbound product management across BI, AI, and data. So really across the portfolio, whereas Google, I was really focused on business analytics. And if I take the business intelligence world, for instance, what have we seen? We're in the 3rd generation. The 1st generation was, how do I understand the data itself, and how do I make it accessible to people through SQL? It was really, really painful. I worked at business objects back then, and it was a lot of fun, but it was really hard. Then we moved to self-service BI. I was at Microsoft, and we had an incredible ride, and now Power BI is one of the top BI tools out there. But if you look at why is it that people are not adopting dashboards as much as they should, is this idea of trust. Gen AI or Gen BI enables us now to actually solve for the job. Nobody woke up with a need to have a dashboard. They had a question to drive their business, and the best way we had found to solve that problem was with a dashboard. Well, with Gen BI now, you might not need the dashboards. You might just need a really good agent, if you will, that you're going to trust, where you're going to be able to explain how the decision was made, and it can be kind of your business analytics assistant, so you can get to the resolution, which is ultimately, where do I need to invest? Why is this store not generating this much revenue, and so forth, which dashboards are very inefficient at. So that's the opportunity, is really standing on that technology to take it to the next level.
Yeah, it's interesting. IBM's got a lot of customers that have a lot of data.
Yes.
So there's the aperture of their opportunities increase to enable that. You mentioned assistants and agents. What's the difference in your mind between an assistant and an agent?
An assistant is something that is helping you within a particular application, or maybe within a particular workflow. The best examples that I think of, again, if I take business intelligence, it's something that's in on the side and is explaining maybe what the dashboard is saying, or maybe answering a question that you can't really answer. It's really application centric. It's in its silo. It's an island, essentially. That's the best way I can explain it. An agent is that plus the ability to collaborate. And so I think about it as maybe it's a cross-domain view, and I think about it as it's a collaborative framework that allows us to get more. So the example of music that we talked about earlier is a great example. You have the guitar player, the drummer, they each have great value in their domain, but when you bring them together, you create incredible music. And so that's, I think, the difference for the agent framework. Now, the big part of agents, of course, they gotta be open, they gotta be governed, because they're cross-application, cross-cloud, cross-domain, they gotta be really good at working together. And so that is really hard when you're a vendor that specializes in building an assistant and application. How are you going to make him collaborate with others? And we know that the best work comes through collaboration. So if we can get agents to collaborate with agents, and agents to collaborate with humans effectively in a governed manner, you're going to get a ton of value.
Ritika was on stage earlier. I saw her conversations. I asked her a question around the shared data layer, okay, which is a big part of the software portfolio. I want to get your thoughts on this, because as the world evolves, you're seeing all the work being done at the infrastructure level. Better chips are coming out, custom silicon, Kubernetes is getting solid, that whole cloud native world is locking in their piece. And then when that's going to finish soon, now your team, and I call the data industry, is preparing that next wave, which is coming right after the infrastructure. Natural progression, of course, agentic right around the corner, and all those agentic systems, as Rob Thomas calls it, think of it like middleware, which is a good way to think about it. So you got, right around the corner is the world's going to spin in your direction. So you got to prepare. What are you preparing? What is Ritika and the team looking at? Because data warehouses were siloed, and they were connected, and then they just moved to the cloud with Snowflake and Databricks. Now they're data lakes. But that's not the end game. New things are going to emerge, like observability, data resilience, the things around security. So data is going to move into things with networking construct. We heard Dario Gil say, we're networking the connections in encoding the data. I mean, that's like a networking concept meets data. So you have this whole layer change. What's your reaction to that? How would you explain that to a normal person as you prepare for that next sequence of events coming, which is the data action?
So you've known that I've been a product guy from day one, right? So and the role in product management is start from the customer out. And so I'm very excited because I get to meet with a lot of customers, and it's the identification of the jobs they're trying to get done that's going to guide us. I know Steve Jobs used to say that customers don't know what they want. I think customers are really good at defining the problems that they have. And it's up to me as the product person to design a system around the solution for that. And so that's the blueprint that I'm using. I mean, I use that at Oracle, I use that at Microsoft, I use that at Google as well, as build a system that is very customer centric, where we truly understand what customers are trying to solve, build incredible empathy with them. The incredible opportunity at IBM is we can have a wide aperture on that, because like I said, we're open and hybrid, so I can have a huge span, if you will, of what I can offer for the clients. And then we have incredible opportunities for IBM Consulting. There's incredible research innovation in the research organization. And so I'm really excited to kind of co-innovate with the customers. But it will start with what are the jobs that they're trying to execute on. And like you said, we have some of the largest brands, the most important brands using our technology already. So we have a lot of data points to be able to design the future with them.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the Steve Jobs quote, because I think he was referring to BlackBerry as when he built the iPhone. But I think the Jobs point is about breakthroughs, and Rob Thomas addressed that. There are breakthroughs coming. We just don't know where they are yet. I think That's important because there's a lot of pragmatic housekeeping you could do right now to prepare, but also there's real use cases for Gen AI.
Yeah.
I mean, Jira tickets are being eliminated. Heard ServiceNow tickets almost going to zero. So there's a lot of enterprise data out there.
Yeah. Well, so interesting you say about the use case, because there's a lot of research around that, right? I think any CIO listening to us will easily go to their business counterparts and say, what are the top use cases you have? And they're going to come up with hundreds of use cases. But I think what research has shown is this 80% of the value actually comes from 3 or 4 key use cases. And where are they? Well, the first one is going to be in employee productivity. I mean, we have a great internal example with using Gen AI for HR, for ourselves. Content creation. So I think about content creation for marketers, of course, but development is a type of content creation, right? When you're creating code. And so that's another one. Customer interfacing, so creating compelling customer experiences where you kind of change the relationship and you delight your customers. It's very true in financial services and retail. And finally, it's all the embed scenarios. I think Rob talked about this idea of, we used to do plus AI, and now we're in this area where we used to build from AI up, AI plus. And so that's how I would parse through those. I'd probably parse across not the hundreds, but maybe the 3 or 4 for your organization, and think about which are the ones where I'm adding AI to, or some that I'm building from AI up. I think this second area, we're going to be surprised with the amount of innovation that customers are going to come up with.
Bruno, thank you for coming on this special CUBE
Thank you.
Here at the IBM headquarters. I'm John Furrier, Dave Vellante and Dave Lickler here in New York City for IBM's Analyst Relations Forum. Thanks for watching.
The best AI assistant isn't one that knows the whole world. It's one that knows your world. A custom assistant built on Watson X with IBM's Granite models can leverage your trusted data, be easily trained on your workflows, and integrate with your apps. It can be tuned to do just what you need, because the more AI knows about your world, the more it can help you do. IBM, let's create.
Well, welcome. Today we're going to talk about some more AI use cases and how to make AI work for your enterprise. And this is, by the way, just an incredibly important topic right now as we're reaching somewhat of a pinnacle in terms of people moving into actually trying to find value for AI. So joining me today is Elizabeth Gomez-Vidal, CRO at Dun & Bradstreet. So tell us about yourself and tell us a bit about Dun & Bradstreet.
Sure. So I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Dun & Bradstreet. Responsible for the end-to-end go-to-market activities and customer engagement model. And a little bit about D&B. Believe it or not, we've been in business for 180 years.
Wow.
And we are the largest information business company, data and analytics, serving a very large and diverse customer base from very large enterprises all the way to small businesses. And we operate across all industries, from banks, insurance companies, to corporations, all the way to public companies and government institutions, and really helping customers through a wide range of use cases and customer personas. So we're engaging and having conversations with the chief data officers, CIOs, head of marketing and sales, all the way to head of compliance and third-party risk. And there are really 3 things that we help customers with. One is growth and revenue acceleration by helping them to understand who they could do business with and what is the target addressable market. Second is risk mitigation, helping institutions to understand who they can extend credit to and what is the credit worthiness of the vendors that you're doing business with, or their suppliers, or their customers. And third is help businesses to stay compliant. When you think about the large proliferation of regulation that we live, is surrounding all of us today, we help customers to understand who they can do business with. Because think about reputational risk, right? And all these areas around us. And at the core of Dun & Bradstreet, we have a crown jewel that we call the DUNS. And those are business identifiers that are used by millions and millions of end users to really understand that the business that they have and they're doing business with is a legit business. And when it comes to AI, that becomes extremely key and entrenched in terms of training models.
So Everybody's into AI right now.
Yes.
But no one can explain to me many times when I have people, on my podcast and interviewing them for other things, what the value that they're finding within AI. So how is AI changing your business moving forward?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot going on right now in our lives, both at work with our customers and our employees, and at home with our children and our families. And the rise and the emergence of AI is really impacting our lives radically and changing and exponentially changing all our business model across all industries, whether you are in healthcare, retail, financial services, media, telecom. You cannot ignore it, right? AI is opening a tremendous opportunity in terms of the business outcomes that you can achieve as you think ahead. But AI doesn't sleep, AI doesn't eat, and is on 24 hours. And I think over the last 12 months, we crossed the threshold between perception and reality when it comes to AI, data, and businesses. And so I think data, trusted data and verifiable data is at the core of this conversation. And it was very interesting, David. I was talking to a CEO of a large AI company, and I said, what is the biggest challenge you have right now when you're interacting with your customers and your large language models? And he said, Isabel, we're running out of data, and we need more trusted data to learn from. And I said, really? Think about trillions and trillions of data in the open web. But the question is, can it be trusted? Can it be verified? And do I have the right to use it? So at DNB, given that we're a data company doing business with customers and sourcing that data for very ethical vendors, we take that at heart. And we've been experimenting with many customers right now we launched actually 12 months ago, DNB AI Labs, where we are in a very safe environment, able to try to make that data available and power up the impact that we can have. We're launching a number of initiatives when it comes to AI to enable to democratize our knowledge and our intelligence of our data and the insights that it can provide.
Yeah, what I love about what you say is what I tell my students. I always tell them this is not an AI problem, it's a data problem. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, we have to get our data right to get the AI right because it learns from the data. And ultimately, it's refreshing to hear someone say that because people are always talking about different AIs and talk about large language models, things like that. And at the end of the day, it's some work to get your data in shape to make it usable for AI. So heard you through a bird that you guys are using IBM Watson X. So how are you using IBM Watson X as a force multiplier for your business?
So you said something really important, force multiplier, but let me give you a little bit of background of our relationship with IBM. So we've been partnering with IBM for a number of years. Both we are a huge customer of IBM technology across DNB, but also, IBM is a customer of DNB using our data across their enterprise data, master data management for multiple use cases, supply, sales and marketing use cases, et cetera. And, when we were thinking about how can we make our data more available to end users, to customers, we thought, who could it be better than actually powering our data through Watson X Orchestrate? And if you think about, for us, IBM is a trusted brand, is a technology company that is forward-thinking, is brought a huge amount of innovation, and it think responsibly about AI, data, and is one of the few companies, if not only the one company, that actually has identified models for third party, which is really important to us.
Absolutely. And the thing is, what my clients are talking about right now, they need to use or basically pick an AI provider that's going to provide them with a true force multiplier. And I always tell them, you need to look at the value of the partnership that you're moving into. The technology you leverage now is going to basically dictate how you're going to leverage the technology for 10 or 20 years into the future. So how do you pick an AI partner like IBM? What do you look for? How do you basically manage that relationship, and how do you define the future?
Yeah, so look, it's all about trusted and verifiable data and technology. And when you think about IBM, to me, what it comes to mind is innovation, trust, responsibility, We both have very common values. We have both very strong brands. We've got a large customer base. And it's important that you partner with institutions that are going to amplify the role that you play in society. And I think IBM is one of them.
Yeah, it's a great company, but ultimately we have to look at what the technology provides and how to move things forward. So it was a trusted relationship that you depended on. So in other words, it was the trust into the company as well as the viability of the technology as well as applicability to your use case?
All the above. And just to give you an example, just to ground what we're doing with them, we actually came with this idea of, wow, having transparency on supplier chain and the risk and visibility on suppliers is top of mind, right? Bearing in mind everything that is happening. What is the reputation of the supplier that you are choosing? Do they have the reputation and the ESG characteristics that you want? How can I onboard suppliers in a faster way? And so we thought we've got really relevant data for that use case. And if you think about IBM, it has thousands and thousands, right, of vendor and suppliers. So how can we enable, IBM to actually select for that use case and converse with our data and solve some of the issues when it comes to procurement and selection of third party. And so now they're using their customer one, using Ask Procurement that we launched, which is powered by watsonx Orchestrate. I'm proud to say that. And we're now making this available to all our joint customers.
Last question, and probably the most important question. What advice would you have to organizations that are looking to create this journey and truly create partnerships, selecting technology, looking at the use cases to solve? What's the one thing that they should know going into this journey?
It's difficult to say just one thing, but be thoughtful, be ethical, be responsible, and make sure that you have a clear line of sight of what the ultimate outcome is and what you want to achieve. And then make sure that you're partnering with vendors and companies that have the same values to you so that you can be successful in that journey.
This is amazing because as we're moving into AI, the successful use cases are there, but they're hard to find. And it's amazing to hear your journey and your journey with watsonx and IBM and you're picking a partner and really kind of taking these use cases to the next level. And this is what it's all about, winning the little battles that are going to win the larger war where we're able to use AI as a true innovative force multiplier for a business. And I think you guys have found it. Well, thank you very much. Enjoyed this conversation. Don't forget to check us out. Don't forget to check out IBM watsonx. Thank you.
If your business needs a new application, then developers will have to write code. A lot of code. If an application needs to be modernized, then you'll need time, resources, and caffeine. If this sounds daunting, then use watsonx Code Assistant. Built with IBM's Granite code model, it's AI designed to multiply developer productivity so you can generate code quickly. IBM, let's create.
Hello, welcome back to theCUBE. Special coverage here in New York City where we are presenting theCUBE coverage of IBM's Analyst Relations Forum. I'm John Furrier with Dave Vellante and Dave Luckham doing interviews all day here in New York City. We have a special conversation here between IBM and AWS. We've got Nick, who's the GM and Head of Global Strategic Partnerships at IBM, and Manu, who's the GM of Business Application Partnerships at AWS. First of all, better together has always been my favorite theme. Love AWS, we have a cloud there. IBM, you guys just got a great positioning going on, the product strategy, the products are looking great. And partnerships are huge right now. It's a key part of the strategy. Obviously, Amazon's a big part of it. Nick, Manu, thanks for coming on theCUBE.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about the partnership. Nick, we'll start with you. IBM is doing more business with AWS. Talk about the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, our relationship with AWS goes back a very long time. In fact, we were just talking about earlier today that we were comparing like 15, 20 years, all kinds of big numbers. From my perspective, the relationship really took off though 3 years ago. Kind of a whole new inflection point and acceleration happened when we decided together to launch ROSA. ROSA being OpenShift on AWS, a huge step forward in terms of trust and hybrid cloud and the fact that we both believe there's a hybrid world in the future. I think from there it's really just kind of become a rocket ship. We've got our consulting practice growing every single quarter. We've got over 24,000 certifications now from an AWS perspective. And then it really took kind of that next rocket ship 2 years ago now when we kicked off our software collaboration. Software started with, let's just make IBM software as SaaS, launch it on AWS Marketplace. Then the marketplace relationship kept expanding. We now have 70 plus products that are available in 100 plus, almost 100 countries now. And then just in the last 6 months, kind of taking that next step, which is all about, let's really make sure our products not just work on AWS, but work well with AWS. And I think that's been exciting as well.
And just give a quick plug for what you guys are doing with partnerships. I know the ecosystem, we've been covering it for 13 years. Obviously, it's been super important. It's the lifeblood of AWS. Give a quick update on the strategic value of your partnerships.
Yeah, I think what Nick mentioned, IBM is one of our largest strategic partners, and that cuts across both, and a very unique partner in the sense that it cuts across both technology partnerships as well as consulting. Yeah. Right from Red Hat to the entire IBM software, as well as to consulting. I think there are two big stats I would like our audience to remember. One is AWS is Red Hat's #1 channel partner, both across RHEL as well as across ROSA, the two big offerings. And the second one is majority of IBM software is now available as SaaS. So over the last 18 months to 2 years, we have now launched more than 20 software titles that are available right across sustainability, data AI, security, and automation. And both of those software, all of those software categories are available on Marketplace. So it's just a very exciting time overall.
What's interesting too, in knowing both of your companies and covering and meeting the engineers and the executives, is you guys were all doing data and AI-like things, and even probably AI before it became generative AI. Predictive analytics has been around for a long, long time. Business analytics, you name it. You guys both been there. But now, it's Gen AI all the time, right? Matt Garma, who I interviewed last month, he said, developers are the lifeblood of our business. And they're back now with the global startup program that Rube is running.
Yep.
So you have now a whole nother wave of inventors coming in. You have enterprises who are retrofitting their platforms and being agile and rebuilding new value. So this Gen AI connection fuses the partnership. Talk about what that means now with your relationship. What you guys are announcing with Bedrock and Granite. What's happening now? Because there's real pressure because the market demand, the first wave of demonstrable values hitting. It's still early innings, as we say, but again, there's going to be more adoption. It's just going to be coming later. It's like the internet and the web, and first people get online, and then next online populations, everyone. AI is going down the same road. What's happening now with Gen AI? What's the IBM plus AWS connection?
I'm happy to start. I think it's been really fun for me to kind of look back. As you know, IBM's strategy for almost 5 years now has been hybrid cloud and AI. I think when we first were talking about that with customers, they're like, I don't know exactly what that means, but okay, let's figure it out. Think fast forward to where we are today. You've got clients with data kind of spread across the enterprise, some on AWS, some on-prem, lots of different on-prem versions, and then they're trying to figure out insights. To your point, how do we make sure I can get insights from data across all those different places, and how can I do that in the easiest possible way? And then when I look at our relationship with AWS, what we've spent a lot of time on is, of course, making products available, as Manu touched on, but now it's kind of that next phase is we're also seeing this very much as a team sport. Not just is it a hybrid environment, but there's lots of different tools, there's lots of different decisions. These are large enterprises, so people are choosing different tools for different types of problems. And then how do we make sure that our technology works well with AWS technology? And I think we announced at Think earlier this year, the fact that watsonx.governance and Amazon SageMaker are now playing nicely together to make sure that governance can govern SageMaker activities. And I think that's really just the start of a lot more of that collaborative piece. So it's going beyond just making our software available and moving towards making sure our software works amazing with our best partners.
Yes, and I think just building on what Nick said, from an AWS perspective, and you know this, John, we are really working on democratizing the entire Gen AI stack. And that really starts from the bottom hardware layer, making sure that the NVIDIA instances as well as the Trainium and Inferentia are available to our customers at higher price performance. Then it ties back to the development and the training of the LLM and the Gen AI models. And then on top of the higher level services. I think this is where we are really working very closely in that training layer with IBM. And that's the watsonx.governance, tying it together with SageMaker. So if you look at SageMaker from a conceptual standpoint, we already have a lot of fundamental security and privacy instruments in place. And I think that's really at the heart of AWS overall as a company. And so that's like network security, data security. You want to make sure that you're not using customer data to really train the model. So that is key. Audit and IAM rules as well. But then when you extend across the entire GenAI LLM training capability, the second aspect is what is the risk profile of an LLM? However, what is the entire pipeline of really training the model? There is compliance involved, legal involved. What does that workflow look like? And I think the third piece is, with the EU AI Act, we are getting quarterly updates on the entire compliance and the legalese around these LLMs. So making sure that the watsonx governance complementing the SageMaker and potentially then the Bedrock story is super important for our customers. I think we talked about Gigaspace as a customer, which is using the foundational layer of SageMaker and then using watsonx governance to really complement the two solutions together.
Before we get into the Bedrock Granite announcement, I do want to point out, I think this is important to call out because IBM and AWS have shared first principles. The trust, you talk about data supply chain and provability.
Yes.
End-to-end workflows right now, if you can't explain the AI, you mentioned regulation, if you can't generate a report, I mean, this is table stakes. And by the way, it's not easy either, Nick. I mean,
Agreed.
This is where we're hearing here today that if you design it right, not bolt-on governance,
Yes.
this has been the key thing. It's very in the weeds, but it's important to call out because if you miss that step, you could be one over your skis, one on product, drift, hallucinations, on security, and then never mind the compliance and the reporting requirements.
I think you're, first of all, you're spot on. I think what's been exciting to me is to see that transformation happen really just in 2024. If you rewind back to 2023, every client I talked to was just like, we're doing as many Gen AI projects as I can possibly find because we've been mandated to do more Gen AI.
Yeah, from the board, do it Gen AI,
exactly.
I read about it.
That's exactly right. Using all kinds of different tools, different approaches. And now I think we've reached this point of maturity back to thinking about cost and price and how is this really gonna scale. In many cases, our clients are saying, well, we've already built a lot of stuff, but we didn't think about governance. So there is a bolt-on kind of like, well, how do we come in and try and understand what you guys have done and we can help in those situations. But what excites me most is the newest discussions we're having now typically start with governance. It's like, what's the value? Like, what are you trying to solve? Well, here's what I'm trying to solve, but how am I gonna make sure I can trust it? Is starting out now as the first discussion. And I think that's where our collaboration really comes to life. And so a lot of the AWS teams have shared the same, that's where discussions are now starting as opposed to ending.
If you told me 5 years ago that the hot topic would be just governance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sure, come on.
Someone in the audit team would tell you that.
Yawn, like, come on. But it's an enabler. It's not blocker. It's an offensive opportunity to move the needle.
That's right.
I mean,
big time.
Customers need governance to deploy these LLMs at scale. I think that's table stakes at this time, and I think the partnership between our two companies is really enabling that. But I think there's another meta point here, John, in terms of what we talked about landing IBM software on AWS, but then it's not just, we don't stop there. I think that's just a starting point. We really now continue to take feedback from our customers in terms of how do we continue to improve that software. So I think the example around watsonx governance with SageMaker is one example. The thing that we're doing with RDS DB2, where we're integrating those two offerings, that's a fantastic example. The stuff that we're doing in terms of constantly improving Instana is another example. I think it just complements to IBM. The company is innovating both in context of getting the software as SaaS on AWS, I think, and then just building on top of it, but also innovating on the go-to-market side. We talked about in the session before, all of IBM software, more than 80 offerings are available on Marketplace. We have more than 26 SaaS offerings. Then we also have our channel partners, the distribution channel, they're also available through Marketplace. So I think it's just a 360 on our partnership in terms of accelerating our business.
And it's interesting, you both have ecosystems. I'm going to talk in depth about this in our podcast tomorrow with Dave Vellante. We've been riffing on this idea of the ecosystem transformation in and of itself. No one's talking about this, by the way. It's about the old ecosystem, just the previous SaaS generation. It was an ecosystem of vendors. They did stuff on the cloud and it was all good and cloud greatness was there. And now you have a distributed computing environment with Gen AI. It's a connected ecosystem. So what you're hearing, agents are going to talk to agents, multi-steps, multi-models. Matt Garman 2 years ago before he was CEO, said, we want every model to work on AWS. So you guys were already seeing the multi-model. The ecosystem is changing significantly.
Yep.
Talk about that dynamic, because now your strategy is to get a great robust ecosystem, but they're connecting into the platform.
Yeah,
Okay?
and we were just talking about this earlier over
Explain.
lunch, and I think a really good example of that we were just talking about is Salesforce. Like, Salesforce is a huge AWS partner. They've launched Data Cloud on AWS. We have just launched a partnership with our watsonx.data and Salesforce Data Cloud running on AWS. And we have expanded that to say, let's also take IBM Datagate and allow Z data to now be surfaced from an insight perspective through watsonx.data on Data Cloud, on AWS. And that intersection is really just accelerating. To your point around agents, at Salesforce, at Dreamforce, we launched a collaboration with Agentforce. So it's Watson Orchestrate working with Agentforce, watsonx.orchestrate skills working underneath Orchestrate. And I think these intersections, we were just saying that I think as we look forward, how to be more intentional around these intersections is something we can spend a lot of time on, because it's happening anyways. So how can we potentially guide it to drive the most value?
You have to be intentional, because the data is there. Because one of the best things about Amazon Web Services, I've always said from day one, is it's horizontally scalable. Right? And then when you have horizontally scale with data, it's a whole different equation, hence that's the conversation. But the vertical domain expertise in the applications are specific. That's where Gen AI shines in the app layer. Okay, so that's happening. Finally, it's multiple years. So Manu, I want to ask you on that point, if you work backwards from the customer, which is the famous Amazonian way, what is that working backwards look like from an IBM customer perspective? Is it better consumption of services of IBM? Is it better together, 1 + 1 = 5? I mean, take us through what that customer value proposition is.
I think,
not to put you on the spot, but I will.
First is 1 + 1 = 11.
Take the plus out, just call it 11.
So I think across our different product categories, we are really working back from, hey, what are the top feature requests that our customers are asking for, and then really prioritizing both on a joint roadmap and then delivering. And so a part of that is around ROSA and making sure that it is supporting some of our latest innovations that we're doing on the hardware side, right from Graviton to Inferentia to Trainium. So I think that's just one example. The other thing we did is RDS DB2. That's like, customers really want a managed database system, we deliver. I think the next thing we are doing is making sure this governance, which is going to be a really super big focus in 2025, it's available across our entire machine learning, AI infrastructure, both across SageMaker and Bedrock, and a lot of the teams are working across that. Then, making sure that the entire automation portfolio now, IBM has a very rich automation portfolio, right from Turbonomics to content management to and so on and so forth. Making sure that really ties into the fabric of AWS. And I think all of it is really delivered from feedback from our customers like Toyota, from Delta Airlines, from Japan Airlines, from Adobe, who are really guiding us in terms of what should be the next priority feature for us to deliver.
Yeah, we're getting the hook here. I wish I had more time, but Nick, inference is a shared thing too. Inference is right around the corner. Well, I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about that reInvent coming up. Inference quality, performance, latency, and cost will be a big deal, especially with multiple models and all the reasoning and multi-step agents are coming down. Real quick, take us through what's next, because reInvent's coming. You got the announcement with Bedrock and Granite working together. What's next for IBM and AWS's relationship? Give us a little teaser.
I mean, from my perspective, and Manu already started to talk about it, but the next phase of our relationship is really more about our technology working better with their technology. And to your point, a lot of that has to do with customer requests. What are customers asking for? How do we get those prioritized across our product teams? And it's not just making sure our software runs on their environment, it's making sure it runs with their other tools. I think the other piece, to your point, back to this kind of scaling of Gen AI, one is certainly governance. That's where most discussions are starting. The very second is value and cost. How do I make sure that I've got the right models for the right things? And I think that's where a lot of our multi-model collaboration will come in, where there's different models to solve different types of problems. How do you do that in the most cost-effective way? But in general, I think it's just going to be listening to our customers and continuing to innovate together.
Yeah, and I think I would just add to what Nick said. Nick talked about the stuff around governance. He talked about how we're going to build and innovate faster. I think I will add two more segments. One is the thing about Salesforce and how do we get the entire ecosystem working together. Probably that would be a third pillar. And then the fourth pillar is around just making sure that we're delivering on the Gen AI capabilities together. So
Heterogeneous ecosystem, which gives choice for the customers and gives the designers and the system developers a better way to compose, or whatever you want. What word are we calling it now?
Yes,
Build?
solve whatever their challenges are. I think you're right. That's very well said.
Nick, Manu, thanks for coming on. I appreciate your
Absolutely.
time. I wish we had more time. We'll follow up on inference and all the product stuff you guys have. Congratulations.
and look forward to seeing at reInvent.
We'll see you at reInvent. Okay, I'm John Furrier here for a special CUBE edition here at the IBM Analyst Forum with Dave Vellante, Dave Littleton. The entire CUBE team is here on the ground getting all the data for you. Thanks for watching.
AI has the power to automate. But if it's using untrusted data, can you trust the results? Your business doesn't just need AI, it needs the right AI for your business. This is watsonx, a platform designed to multiply output by tailoring AI to your needs. When you watsonx your business, you can train, tune, and deploy AI, all with your trusted data. Let's create the right AI for your business with watsonx. IBM, let's create.
Well, welcome everybody. My name is Dave Vellante. I'm here today with Hillary Hunter, and we're going to talk about the insides of AI and how it's working for enterprises out there, which is extremely important to me because I'll tell you what, everybody's trying to figure it out. I mean, I've been in this business, Hillary, for 30 some odd years, since the late 80s. I was a Lisp programmer, and then suddenly AI was the tiger by the tail. So you're becoming kind of AI aware and looking at the marketplace. It just took off in all kinds of crazy directions now. Enterprises are trying to figure out what to do. I think the technology vendors are trying to figure out how to provide it. And what I'm seeing now is interesting. I'm seeing kind of a stagnation as the enterprises are looking at the technology providers. The technology providers have done a lot of investment in the system. They're trying to find the right use cases for it. They're trying to figure out how to hire the people that they need to build it.
Yeah.
And there's just a ton of confusion. I just got off a call for 2 hours talking to CIOs who were confused about generative AI, trying to explain to them how to think about this stuff and how to leverage it as something that's going to basically bring their business to the next level. You have to remember that if we leverage AI effectively, we're able to create a unique, innovative differentiator for some of these businesses. We are able to take a pharmaceutical business or a bank or a car business to the next level by leveraging AI as something that's going to become something that provides them with a unique perspective, unique competitive advantage that their competitors don't have. And that's what's at stake here, which is very different than the movement to cloud, the movement to service-oriented architecture, all these things had in the past. So what are you guys experiencing here? I'd love to get your input.
Yeah, I think part of that question is sort of, can enterprises get there? Is there something to be had right now? And I think there's a general belief, when you look at the neighborhood book club or something like that, that AI can do things, but enterprises are still very much on that journey of figuring out where to find that competitive advantage. I think in contrast to maybe the first era of AI where use cases were more restricted, we were really excited that deep learning models could help you identify what was in a picture. It could label that it's a cat sitting on a table, for example. A lot of enterprises had trouble figuring out how to just use image recognition and picture labeling in a way that was effective for their business. The transition now with generative AI is into much more macro topics like digital labor. You can reinvent your business and its efficiency. You can give your procurement engineers superpowers in making much more intelligent decisions because they're able to access and handle much more data all at once and such like that. And so the transformative opportunity now is not just labeling, cats sitting on tables in a garden, in terms of that type of, picture and deep learning image recognition or voice recognition or things like that. It's now the opportunity to change business processes. And that goes all the way from things that you're doing on the cloud to things that you're doing in traditional transaction processing on a mainframe. So the other element is that this round of AI is much more pervasive about applications and opportunities throughout the IT landscape and throughout the overall functions of a business.
Absolutely. And the big thing now that I think enterprises are trying to figure out is what do you run and where do you run this stuff?
Yeah.
So everybody was trying to build a ChatGPT for a bank and ChatGPT for the automobile industry. I heard this 2 years ago. And then I told them what it was going to cost to do that. And so we're going to have to come out to more tactical use cases for this. So now everybody's talking about smaller language models, agentic AI, as well as building LLMs. Mm-hmm. So the ability to make this stuff scale becomes kind of a core capability. And the ability to put this on platforms is going to be more optimized for the use cases that you're moving after.
Absolutely.
So you guys have, the notion of hybrid by design, your ability to kind of leverage the platforms that are going to be aligned to the particular workloads that you're using, that are aligned to the use cases. Tell me about that. How does that work?
So in working with clients, I very much see what you're saying, which is that everyone is trying to get ROI out of AI, having now shown its ability to do something useful for the enterprise. And part of getting ROI is getting the cost under control. And we firmly believe that that means looking at AI as a conversation in its entirety across the full hybrid cloud landscape, across the full IT landscape. And I think hybrid cloud maybe begs defining, right? It's good to define what we mean by that, because we're not talking only about having multiple cloud instantiations. We're talking about having similar and identical capabilities that you can choose where you deploy them. And that enables you to get into the workload placement conversation in a way that is conscious of data gravity. Where is the data? Well, that's maybe the cheapest place to bring the AI to. On the other hand, it's conscious of elasticity requirements. Maybe then, your AI-based workload should be in the cloud, so we can instantaneously respond to when you're running a Super Bowl advertisement and need more capacity, right? And so there's this optionality that hybrid cloud and hybrid cloud by design, which is the conversation about having consistency in platform capabilities, workload monitoring and observation, optimization of the IT and AI, being able to run in the public cloud, in multiple public clouds, on premises, on traditional IT, and maybe even out at the edge. So wherever your data is, your customers are, you want to have the optionality to match the AI to those things so that you can get the cost efficiency to be as good as possible and therefore have the ROI as high as possible.
I love that. And I'm teaching a generative AI architecture course now, and one of the things my students and I are wrestling with is how to do the platform, make the platform decisions. And what I used to hear about in early cloud computing days were, well, hey Dave, what's the best cloud? Now I hear, what's the best AI platform?
Yeah.
And you get to this whole thing, it depends. It depends on the workload, what you're trying to solve. Whether it's going to be a small language model, agentic-based deployment, large language model deployment. You don't always need a GPU, and certainly localization of these things. So how are you matching platforms to the workloads, to the AI workloads, and then bringing that back into ROI? Because this is about optimization of the systems. You got to remember, at the end of the day, everything works.
Yeah.
So I can put this very small process on this very expensive platform, and it's going to work just great.
Yeah.
It's going to run like crazy. Guess what? It's going to cost me $1 million more a month than I should be paying. So there has to be some business consideration, this localization of the technology, your ability to understand the business outcomes of these systems. So how are you instructing people to pick platforms?
Yeah, I always say hybrid by design is a conversation about optionality, right? Having the option to take your AI where you need to across that landscape. It's a conversation about intentionality. So having the discussion about what are the overall factors and the cost of this deployment going to be? Is it going to be movement of data? Is it going to be throughput? Is it going to be that I am running the AI on as many credit card transactions that flow through the system as possible, or is there an implied cost to doing that at a lower rate and missing some potential fraud? So as you look at sort of that intentionality, the optionality to be across the estate, you mentioned cloud, and cloud absolutely is a primary place for AI these days. But then, choosing which cloud as relates to the rest of your data architecture and your workload architecture is an important variable that you want to have to be open because you likely are using multiple clouds. Our surveys of CIOs globally indicate that if you ask people, do they have a hybrid cloud? Maybe not an intentional hybrid cloud architecture, but do they have a hybrid cloud? Meaning, are they using multiple clouds? It's over 80%, right? This is everyone's reality now, which is having multiple cloud environments. But to flip to the opposite side of where you started, an example from the mainframe. Our recent survey of IT leaders indicate that 78% are looking to deploy AI on the mainframe. Why? Well, important data, our increased capabilities for AI optimization, AI acceleration in our current generation systems, and we've announced improved capabilities in our next generation processor and introducing an accelerator card we call Spire. And the reason for that really is to be able to say, can we in place do AI and machine learning technologies as critical things like credit card transactions or airline bookings or other things like that flow through the system in place, rather than bouncing around to a complex architecture, some there, some in the cloud, et cetera? Can we do it in place and get a lot of value in return from that AI? And I think That's a really great example of where making the decision to do it in place, bring the AI to the compute, bring the AI to the data, and having that optionality across the estate can really help lower the costs and improve the outcome, because you're then watching everything real time as it flows through the system.
Yeah, it's funny. I made a case for leveraging the mainframe for AI-based systems, and people came up after they go, we thought that was legal, and I said, no, it's legal, and you can do it, and it has a great opportunity for doing that because of the ability to bring the power you already have in your organization and match it to the workload models. And in some cases, that's going to be the most optimized way to do that. And you get to that discussion, that's a different level of play than everybody trying to throw, the new hyped platforms at the system versus leverage what you got. Because it's already invested.
And it's not just mainframe, right? I mean, we're working with a hospital in Asia Pacific, and they have a bunch of different data sets related to patient diagnostics on a power system. And then by integrating the speech to text work, the image recognition work, and the different elements of their overall workflow around diagnostics using the on-Power 10 AI accelerator, they've been able to go from a 3-day to a 1-day workflow, which as a patient concretely means getting my diagnosis in a day rather than waiting half the week or more, right? And so that's really just about them making a strategic platform decision of where to integrate things and where in the overall process things are going to be most efficient and most quickly done. And having that flexibility, whether it's on-prem, on distributed infrastructure, on a power system, on a mainframe, or it's in different clouds where different elements of your workload are, I think are absolutely key, one of the key elements to making the whole AI process cost efficient.
Absolutely. I'm going to rename my podcast to the Model of the Week podcast, because every AI model is coming out and I have to talk about it, and my clients are asking about it, and it's becoming a bit nuts. You guys have your own model, Granite. Ultimately, how should enterprises consider the integration of AI models, and what importance should be there, and how should they make a decision as to which ones to run?
Yeah, with Granite, our focus really is in creating models that have, I guess, a couple of critical dimensions. One of those is smaller models that can punch above their weight class, so to say, in terms of number of parameters, smaller number of parameters, performing and giving the accuracy and results for an enterprise workflow of a model which might have many, many more parameters. Why is this important to this conversation? It's important because when people think about optionality across the estate, running on premises, running at the edge, other things like that, model size may be a consideration, right? Having a smaller model means throwing a little bit less hardware at it, running it more efficiently, having a cooler system, lower carbon footprint, other elements like that, right? And the second element is helping clients adapt those models for their customized purposes through, for example, our InstructLab technology. And we've been helping clients from an infrastructure perspective create on-premises environments to quickly create models using storage acceleration technology, using our storage appliances and our Fusion family, to create models quickly and then to adapt and deploy them efficiently. And I think that from this perspective, having models that have known data sources, we're very transparent on that. We provide indemnification, very, very critical to enterprise value. And then we help our clients adapt those to their specific purposes to get a targeted outcome, and then match infrastructure to that enables them, again, across that IT landscape to get a great outcome. And so you can use the Granite model in public cloud, from an API perspective, through a service, you can build around it. You can get an appliance on premises to use our models as well, or you can just consume it as software and run it on hardware you've already got, right? And so again, that's the flexibility. Start with software, an appliance, a cloud service, whatever you need to get to a cost optimized outcome. We're trying to meet enterprises where they're at.
I love that, because you're talking about, this is about business optimization. And I think we missed that in lots of the other generations of technology. We didn't assign the business as a priority, as a first-class citizen in building these architectures. And this is something I think we're having to be pushed back to it now, because now we're talking about building systems that are very costly to build and very costly to maintain, but they're also able to bring a lot of value back to the business. So obviously multimodal technology, ability to leverage these kinds of systems in AI becomes very important. So how are you guys considering that as part of your infrastructure, and what kind of questions are you getting from your clients around that?
Yeah, multimodal is an interesting term. Maybe I should pause and define that a little bit. But by that we mean, a combination of different types of technologies. We also refer to ensemble AI, the ability to combine together machine learning and deep learning technologies with encoder models from generative AI and kind of bring everything together and sort of use the best fit for the particular thing that you're trying to solution. Ensemble AI and kind of combining technologies has been a core focus of us in what we've been doing in our program for enabling integration of AI on the mainframe systems. But I think overall, it's a much broader conversation as well about getting to that optimal outcome. Using a model that is small and efficient for the targeted purpose can help an enterprise get to that sort of value stream generation that you were bringing up much more quickly. And providing that optionality to combine together the best of both worlds is a way that we're seeing a lot of enterprises have success in getting through that hurdle of closing the loop between the IT team, the software and application team, and then the overall business owner that's looking for an outcome.
So what advice would you give to the, I would say, rank and file CIO, the person out there that's making their business work, the person that, CIO can be a very tough position in many of these organizations that are looking at AI and considering all the options out there. What are the things they should be considering now that are most important to you?
Yeah, I mean, you threw out a couple of the words earlier that I love to gravitate to. Platform. I think there's a very significant platform conversation going on right now that has to do with optionality and ensuring that you have the ability to both oversee and optimize and manage and govern costs in a consistent way on this topic across different environments. I think there's a very significant optimization conversation. That means also workload optimization of your GPU farms that are handling your model build and deployment. For us, that's things like Turbonomic, for example, and Instana to have visibility on what's going on, Apptio to track costs and things like that. So those are all part of the hybrid by design and kind of platform conversation. But I think when it comes to this topic of AI, one of my, several of the organizations that I really have a lot of respect for the velocity at which they're moving on these topics, the CIO, the CDO, the Chief AI Officer, the CAIO, whatever the titles are, and the risk and security teams are really functioning as a unit with a joint objective of getting AI deployed. And a lot of times that means in taking the workload decisions into account, it means taking into account things like security and compliance, data sovereignty, these other effects that might lead to an on-premises solution or might lead to a private cloud solution. Those conversations all happening in the open, I find, and being solved as sort of a multi-factor consideration can lead organizations to a workload selection, in terms of the deployment location, like we were talking about earlier, that enables you to get to a yes for moving from POC to production AI. And I think that's really what we are hoping to help bring together, is that when those communities, the CIO, CTO, CAIO, Chief Risk Officer, Chief Security Officer, et cetera, when they all have different and seemingly competing things that they're trying to solve in getting something deployed, we want to offer, again, that optionality across the hybrid cloud landscape so that things like risk, security, compliance, et cetera, can all be a yes as well, and can help projects move to production as quickly as possible.
That's great. And you're in the center of the universe at all, sitting here in IBM. I feel the innovation occurring around me.
We're surrounded by clients here today.
Surrounded by clients here today. So moving forward, this is probably one of the more important times that we're going to experience in IT evolution. You think about this in the last 35 years of my career. The next 5 years is going to be pinnacle to corporations be able to take themselves to the next level. And I think if they don't, many of them are going to cease to exist. They're not able to take the advantage of AI. And therefore, their clients are going to come up and they're going to take the market share away from them right now. So I can't stress this enough. It's very important you get literate in AI, you understand the moving parts. It's fairly complex, but it's fairly easy in many aspects of it. Find the partners, work with the technology vendors that are going to provide the most value. That's how you win the war. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for this discussion today.
You got it.